Terence Crawford, making it known that a fight between him and Canelo Alvarez will be the biggest fight in boxing right now. Um, so from Crawford's point of view, it's the type of fight that seems the most logical to make given the circumstances surrounding the other opponents that's been attached to Crawford. One, the rematch with Spence is no longer a sure thing given his eye surgery. Second, Crawford, he said he has removed Jamel Charlo from the so-called hit list after his one-sided loss to Canelo. And third, Crawford is pretty much done with the 147 division. Specifically speaking, he's not really entertaining a fight with Jaron Ennis. So considering all those situations, coupled with the fact that Crawford just unified the welterweight division, I think Crawford going forward is only looking for that one mega fight to conclude his career, and he sees Canelo as the only one who meets that criteria of such a fight. Um, Now, based on Canelo's several appearances on podcasts and talk shows late last year, he has not shared that same enthusiasm. In his mind, a win over Crawford, even at 168, would do nothing for his career in terms of legitimacy. Sure, another big payday secured, but it would add nothing of substance, defeating a fighter who has never competed even around middleweight. So I'm not sure if boxing fans are really serious in wanting a Canelo versus Crawford fight. For me personally, I'm not craving for it. I'm more concerned about Canelo fighting more of the deserving names in his division, namely speaking, David Benavidez, David Morrell Jr. As for Crawford, I'd like to see him still compete at 154. Hopefully, he would still consider a Jermell Charlo fight. Virgil Ortiz recently just touched down at 154, and of course, you've got Tim Tszyu, the reigning WBO champ. So, Tommy Rush Jr., let's get your thoughts about Terence Crawford making headlines, calling for that fight against Canelo Alvarez.
Man, so this has been something that's been a talk for a little while now. We seen this post the Spence fight, and so I really think that a lot of this boils down to what Terence Crawford said. That he was after he defeated Spence and became 2-time undisputed. He said he wanted 3-time. And that's what he was talking about. And if we remember, at the time, he was down for going after Charlo for that, because Charlo held those belts and he was undisputed. But what happened? Charlo sold that zero, and he did what he needed to do to get that Canelo fight. And so, the next biggest fight, the next person that he could go after for a legacy, and 3-time undisputed was Canelo. He did also say in that time period where he was talking about that, to give him about a year to try to bulk up for it. He felt extremely confident that, given about a year or so amount of time to really put on that additional weight and not try to throw it on quickly, that he would still be able to compete in that outstanding fashion against somebody like a Canelo Alvarez. Now, to answer your question, I'm about like you. It's not something that I'm saying, yeah, we need to see this type of fight. Like, let's get this and let's make this fight happen. But if this does come to fruition, then I'm gonna be all damn for it, to see it and see what happens. Because one, we already know that Terence Crawford, he's kind of danced around it and talked about it as well, and we've all talked about it. He's not young, he's only probably have a few years left, and so he's really gonna give us a few more fights. So is this something that people could talk about and say is more about money? Sure, people could say that. There's a lot of different things that could be said. But what has been said as well is that he's going to chase that legacy, and this is something that that others have done, that we've seen Canelo do, that we've seen other people do, to dare to be great, and that's what he's looking to do here. In order to try to achieve what he's actually after to achieve, which is to be the only boxer, to be in this 4-belt era, to be 3 times undisputed. And so I think that's really what he's going after. What we could potentially even see, who knows? I mean, we don't know what that fight is going to end up looking like, but for damn sure, it would be a mega fight, and one that would sell a shitload, in the gate, and make both sides a lot of fucking money. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, you did mention his age in Terence Crawford, and given his age, I would understand how how Crawford traversing the 154 division, he wouldn't really want to do that the same way he did with the welterweight because he has a limited amount of time. So again, I don't blame him for seeking Canelo, even if it would mean jumping three weight classes. So good points, Tommy. Tiffany, let's get your thoughts on Crawford's thoughts targeting that fight for Canelo in 24.
I'm really kind of like on the fence about it, kind of like what both you guys have brought up as far as, like Terence Crawford, doing there's fights that Canelo can do that we actually want to see, like Benavidez. We definitely want to see that fight. I know that's one of my top fights for Canelo Alvarez. And so, I can't really say who I want to bud the fight. But the moment that they keep bringing it up, I'm like, is this real? And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be there. Even if it's in Saudi Arabia, I'm going to fly to Saudi Arabia if that fight happens. I'll tell you that right now. I'll be in Saudi Arabia. I thought about that. I was like, how long does it take for me to get to New York to Saudi Arabia? 16 hours. How many days do I need to recover? I've already mapped all of this out. So just so you know, I'll be there. But I'm with you, Tommy, on this. Canelo, with him just kind of shutting it down, is kind of like ironic because he's the same type of person that chases the same type of goals. Like he goes after legacy. He wanted to be undisputed. He was going all the way up to light heavyweight. He was doing things that people hadn't done. And we had seen him fight at 151 and fight at 147. So it's not like too far fetched, but I'll watch it. I will watch it. I'm not going to turn that down. But like I said, I can't pinpoint anybody that I want to see Terence Crawford fight at 147, at 154. He needs that one big fight, and this will secure his legacy. So I say it's all good for him, but it won't look as good for Canelo, like Tommy said, because he's like, and like you said, Aaron, because he's so much bigger. And it's kind of like if I win and it's like I beat him, he's a little dude. You know what I'm saying? But if he loses, it's kind of like, I lost to Terence Crawford. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's a lose-lose situation for Canelo.
Great thoughts, Tiffany. So, Courtney, let's get your perspective on all this regarding Crawford targeting Canelo in 24.
I mean, if it does happen, it's a fight. It's a fight for the ages in that it's two guys in this era who have done nothing but go after legacy and hunt the big game and hunt the rewards that come from that. But as y'all have alluded to, it's a conundrum from Canelo because there's a real possibility he could lose that fight against Crawford because Crawford is going to bring to that fight more versatility than any opponent he has ever faced. And if he wins, well, then, as his detractors just have more fuel in that you're only beating up guys that come up to fight you. So with Canelo, in his regard and his response to that, I can understand it. And as far as Terence Crawford calling for this fight and trying to rally public support for the fight, I can get that too, because with him being a little long in the tooth in the game, not having much time left, I think with fighters, with boxers particularly, as they get to this stage in their career, they have to seek these matchups that they can get up for. And I think Crawford is one of those highly competitive guys. He's got to be up for it. And we see at this point in stages like this, when guys, they fight, an obscure mandatory opponent, or they go up and fight the lesser known guys, they have a harder time getting up for that, and that's when their slip starts to show. And so, I think with Crawford, he's looking at it too is the risk isn't in fighting Canelo. That's purely reward. The risk is in fighting a Kostya. The risk is fighting a Victor Ortiz, in that these guys these guys are dangerous, and they can catch him slipping, and then his legacy and what he's accomplished kind of slides or detracts with a loss for dudes like that, even though they're in higher divisions, but he's just been so dominant at 147. That's the next natural progression for him, where he wants to leapfrog that and go to astronomical heights with a matchup against Canelo. I mean, I think even getting in the ring, I think even getting Canelo to sign for that fight as soon as the first bell rings, Bud is solidified in his legacy just off that alone, win, lose, or draw in that fight. So I understand both perspectives, but it's also one of those, it's where we as fans will definitely take it. It's definitely intriguing. It's definitely something to talk with your friends about. It's definitely something to argue in the barbershop about. But if it doesn't happen, hey, there's Benavidez, there's Morrell, there's a Bevo rematch for Canelo that are all intriguing. And even Canelo has talked about going up to cruiserweight and taking one of the straps up there. Those are all intriguing matchups for Canelo. In terms of Crawford, there's Zoo, there's there's Tim Zoo, there's even if he stays at 147, there's Jerron Ennis. And even as much as I hate to say it, a rematch against Spence, it can sell, it can generate discussion, it can generate buzz. So I mean, if they fight each other, it's a win for boxing. If they don't, and they fight these matchups, they're more progressed to take, that's a win too. So I just look at the discussion of this as a win-win, whether it happens or it doesn't.
I mean, Spence, he still exercised the rematch clause. So with the surgery, it's just technically still delayed further out. It's not technically called off. Could somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, or is that still a possibility from what I'm seeing from my vantage point?
Typically there's a time frame in rematches and with rematch clauses that it has to happen in. I haven't read or heard anything about a time frame, but I would have to imagine that Spence can't just hold him off on fighting someone else forever.
Right. Great stuff. And also, so Tommy, let me redirect to you. Let's say, Canelo is remaining 2 PBC fights. There's reports that Jamal Charlo is one of them, and let's say he actually entertains Benavidez for the third fight. If he goes that route with Canelo, what do you see Crawford doing in that time frame, in your opinion?
So I mean, honestly, I think that if he did, take that route and Crawford is pretty much left out. I would expect him to at least try to campaign in 154. I don't necessarily think that he would double back and go with the Jerron Ennis, Boots Ennis route. That one just seems like it seems like it's kind of lost that luster to really try to beef that one back up. There's been a lot of kind of shutdown on that one. So I mean, I don't think that really, if he's still going to campaign at 147, that there's really going to be much there. So I think that honestly, he would campaign 154. Where, like what we said, we've talked about Tim Zoo, which I thought that would have been one of the first fights that he would have gone after originally, until this kind of bubbled into the Canelo talk. But yeah, I would say the Tim Zoo era. I think that Tim would really be down for that one. He would call him out and challenge him, and we could see that one happen if that were the case. But yeah.
Great stuff, Tommy. So Stephen Rees, he's in the chat. So he says, if he wants to respond,
Steve.
Canelo isn't giving Al Heyman Benavidez on the 3-fight deal. That's going to the Saudis. So anyone want to respond to that?
Makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Unless Heyman jumps in bed with the Saudis. But I think that's unlikely, because I think the Saudis are very much they've made inroads with Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren and even Bob Arum. So but I think Heyman is going to make domestic fights, and and with this new deal with Amazon, I already see the direction it's going. Is in terms of when PBC first started, and it was on 51 million networks. and he's kind of shooting his wad per se, and giving us basically putting all the top guys in his stable on those premier platforms, and then it kind of tapering off and just going mediocre, and to where we saw it putter out, where it went back to Showtime exclusively, and we were getting mediocre matchups per se. I hope I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of been the Al Heyman footprint per se on that. But I think as far as the big matchups, I think as far as the hot fights that people want to see, it's basically rotated to Saudi Arabia, and they have a lot of money that they're looking to put into that. And I've read the stories with the Saudi government. The writing has been kind of on the wall, if people follow world events and economics, kind of particularly, is that the oil is quietly and slowly drying up over there, and the Saudis are looking for new revenue streams. And one of the big inroads they're trying to make is entertainment that brings tourism to Saudi Arabia, and they are all in on that, and they are putting a lot of investment and a lot of money from that royal family into they made a big splash in the sporting world when they started an alternate to the PGA Tour with the Live Golf the golf tour, and now we're seeing the same thing with boxing. So I think with them and the relationships that they're forming right now, I think that's where the money is. And I think if Crawford and Canelo does happen, I think it'll more than likely be in Saudi.
Yeah, good take, Courtney. And also, I want to showcase a series of comments from Julian Gibbons. He makes some good points back to back. He states, although Showtime is out of boxing, Canelo's next two fights will be broadcast on Showtime. Al is saving Benavidez' fight for Amazon Prime, and he follows up with that. Hence, why it's not one of the two fights for 2024. He ain't taking no fight before Canelo. And Jose Rendon, he adds to that, as Julian alluded to, if the timeline on Bud retiring before Canelo or Benavidez, then why wait to fight Bud after Benavidez? Al wants Bud first, then Benavidez on a fight that isn't going anywhere. Any comments on that?
Hey man, we all know that Al is a sneaky, shifty one, and so I mean, as they're talking to it, as far as maybe trying to stall that Benavidez fight out to have that on Amazon Prime. Hey, he very well could be trying to lace that pocket real quick and make sure that he comes out with a splash with a fight like that on Amazon Prime. I mean, that sounds like a Heyman move for damn sure.
It seems kind of quick though. Like, Canelo usually fights May, September, something.
Yep, Cinco de Mayo and Mexican Independence.
We're already in February, like halfway in February. So like something's gonna happen. They need to start saying something rather quickly within the next month to start camp. But I would imagine that if Canelo and Bud was to happen this year, the latter part of the year, Terence wouldn't fight anybody else. He'll just focus on camp, and that will be it. So.
I said it last time we were on air, and I'm going to reiterate it. And I know nobody wants to see it. I'm saying it: Canelo and Jermall Charlo. I think that's going to be next. And if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, I think it might possibly be David Morrell. But and I know there's a lot of talk with the Munguia's last performance. That and he was being very direct in saying that he wanted to fight with Canelo. I don't see that happening because I don't think Canelo is gonna mess with Oscar like that. And Munguia he's still on Golden Boy. That's still a DAZN platform, and Canelo is still under this deal with PBC. So I really don't see the logistics of that fight happening unless there's some major concessions that get made from Munguia's side. But even then, I think Canelo was very apt not to give Oscar any play with Golden Boy. I think he's very apt in it, and the likelihood of Canelo going back to fight on DAZN on that platform is highly likely, but it won't be it won't be with as a feature with Golden Boy. He's going to go back to DAZN and he's going to fight Matchroom fighters.
Right on, right on. And another comment by Julian Gibbons. I think he was following up with what Tiffany said. He states, Julian Gibbons, I quote, waiting would normally be a bad thing, but I think Bud could use that time to bulk up properly for Canelo in September. So that makes sense.
I mean, I think the soundest logic would be for Bud to fight it if he wants to have a real chance against Canelo, beyond the one that he already has. I think he would need an interim fight. He would need an interim fight with one of the bigger guys at 154. Now whether that's him getting in with Fundora or getting in with Mendoza, or somebody who's kind of on the fringes on 154 but still competitive, that might be it. But I don't think Crawford is an impulsive guy by any rate. So I would say I would not be surprised to see Bud go ahead and concede and take somebody in the interim before. And honestly, if he's really campaigning and pressing for that, that's a situation where he's more than likely than not gonna have to take an interim fight before I just don't see a situation where he hops right in with Canelo, or Canelo concedes and like, you know what, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and fight you. Because I don't think there's that much money on the table for that fight yet.
Courtney, what you don't realize about Terence Crawford is he ain't right up here. He's super competitive. He will say he gonna beat your ass, somebody else's ass. He gonna dunk on somebody else. Like he was at a funeral and he was telling little kids he was gonna beat their ass and dunking on people. A girl was in the WNBA. He challenged her to a basketball game the same day. He didn't have no clothes, no nothing. He was just gonna wear what he had on. This dude is outrageously competitive. He don't care if Canelo signs the thing. I think he'll just go ahead and do it without any other fight. That's how competitive this man is. I've never met anybody like that.
Oh yeah, if Canelo were to put paper to pen right now, yes, obviously Crawford would fight. He wouldn't have made the statement on Twitter and on these platforms if that wasn't his intention, if he wasn't down to do that. But there's what we want as individuals, and there's the reality of situations, and there's the business and the politics of boxing, and Canelo is very versed in that, right? You know what I'm saying, right now. It's one of those, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna marinate.
So I guess the overall feeling that we're getting, in my view, like we want the fight, but far down the road, but it's not really that imminent, per se. So let's see what happens. As far as
and I'm sorry, but in order for Canelo to be credible in that fight against Crawford, I think Crawford would have to demonstrate that he's viable beyond 147.
Yeah.
Just beyond the eye test, just beyond the capability, just beyond what he demonstrated in doing to Spence. I think in order for Canelo to really see a matchup with Crawford as being viable, Crawford would have to show him something beyond 147. Whether whether that's an impressive win at 154, or whether it's him jumping 154 and beating somebody up at 160. I think it's gonna have to. Crawford's gonna have to demonstrate something like that, other than just being like on Twitter saying, "Yo, I want to fight Canelo. I'll beat your ass."
I mean, that's fair. I mean, that's fair for Canelo, assuming that's accurate. That it's fair for Canelo to want to see something from Crawford first. You got to show me something, Crawford. At least anywhere around my weight classes, my weight class, for me to entertain what you want in 2024 or 2025 for that matter. So it's going to be
because Canelo takes a lot of heat. Canelo takes a lot of heat, and there's a lot of detractors who have the notion that Canelo doesn't fight you if you're too dangerous. I think it's the opposite. I
Yeah.
think what Canelo's demonstrated by his career is he doesn't fight you until he believes that you're dangerous. And,
Oh yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and I think him fighting Bivol, I think him fighting
Yeah.
Kovalev at 175. I think him taking the steps that he did, that he has in moving up in the scales himself. I think I think that's where he's at. And I think Canelo has to be, he has to be up for matchups too. And I think you kind of have to scare Canelo in order for him to sign to fight you. And I don't think Crawford has showed him anything where he's looked at it as like, yo, this dude, he might be, he might have something for me.